Hi, I'm Bill Snyder, Director for Asia Pacific Media based in the Philippines, and welcome to the very first podcast we've called Connected Faith. It's an Asia Pacific Media podcast. Joining me in each of these podcasts is Dr. Layne McDonald. Layne is based in Memphis, Tennessee, but has a history that we'll learn about as we kind of introduce ourselves during this first session. So, Layne, welcome. Thanks for being a part of this.
Thanks for having me.
Tell me a little bit about your background in media, and then I'll do the same, and we'll get into why in the world we're going to be doing a podcast.
Yeah, sure. I always wanted to be a youth pastor from probably second grade, but I was very media centric. I always found myself, by fifth grade, sixth grade, I was on the video team at church. By seventh and eighth, I was editing the worships for television, right? So I'd always had a just a DNA kind of built into me, visual art. I even got sent down to a mouse house at an early age to talk about working for them as an illustrator. Took a tour at ninth grade. They wanted me to sign documents. So from singing to illustration to acting on stage to having my dad bought a video camera for us in sixth grade. He never saw it. It was mine. I was at the family at the festivities during Thanksgiving and Christmas. I was the kid hiding and running around, taking photos and videos of everybody, not having real discussions, but looking through the lens, right? I was that at a very early age. When I got out of high school, I started youth ministry training and became a youth minister very quickly, but quickly learned the politics and all that. There was just something ingrained into me that just didn't fit well with the politics of it all. And all I wanted to do was visually teach what Christ could do and instill into other people. That's all I wanted to do, right? But, and so I went into film and television, and God sent me through a crazy trek through Hollywood and Washington and politics and in film. And I remember the last day as a youth pastor at my fourth church. It just was not working out, right? And it was like just bringing different youth groups together was an issue. Teaching Judaism and the history of the Passover it was an issue. It's just, and then getting brought into political stuff. I was never political. I didn't want that. I wanted just to do good news and spread the good news. And my last day as a youth pastor was such a heart-wrenching day. I still remember it like it was yesterday, where I was just praying to God. I was like, please bring me back to ministry. Whatever I could do, but if not, I'll do everything I can behind a desk, behind a camera, behind an editing desk. And that's what I did for 25 years. And here I am now, back in a ministry position. God had to put some maturity in me. But yeah, this is what I love. This is what I love doing. And that's basically my trip in a nutshell.
Quick deep dive in one area. You said you were in Hollywood for a while. What's your involvement there?
It was more like there was like a bookend to that. So I was with Louis Giglio and Andy Stanley at North Point in my first college, and I got a strange job request at a Catholic television network in Birmingham. A lot of people know it, EWTN, Mother Angelica, and all that. And I was talking to Louis, and I was like, I don't understand what God's doing here. And he's like, well, if God's calling you, don't tell him to come to you. Go to him. So I quickly went, and within months, I met Jim Caviezel, Mel Gibson, working on Passion of the Christ. And they said, we need a fast editor, someone that's fast that can help us with behind the scenes. Everybody pointed to me, and off I went. So from there, I did Polar Express, City of Ember, I Am David, worked with the Walden studio. And so when the banks crashed in 2008, I was working on City of Ember, the film. I was doing the marketing for it. By 2009, end of 2009, I couldn't get a job because everything went in-house. So we had to go to Hollywood. From City of Ember, I met one of the actors out there, and they got me involved with a couple of studios, and I did music videos, television shows, and feature films. And then I got a job back in Memphis, and we quickly came back to family. Because the whole reason we were out there was because all the jobs were in-house. So once everything started opening up. From here, from Memphis, we worked on the Nashville TV show, a lot of musicians out of Nashville, a lot of commercials.
That's quite a deep dive. Very good.
It was a fun Alice in Wonderland kind of trip.
Yeah, and a lot of learning at a high level.
So just to bring that to the church is my passion.
Fantastic. My experience.
How about you? You said you were going to tell a little bit about yourself.
I started in radio, and it was a way to pay the bills in college. Became a Christian when I was a senior at the University of Illinois, majoring in marketing and business administration. As a result of becoming a Christian, I went to Bible college because I knew nothing. When my pastor said, you really need, if you're going to go into ministry, you really need this experience. So I went there. I continued to work at radio to pay bills. Your basic announcer to program director, things. After graduating, I was invited to come back to my home state of Illinois and start a Christian radio network. And those things didn't exist in the 70s. Now, I'm giving away my age and gray hair, but gray hair does that anyway. So we launched a Christian radio network that is still in existence today, doing a remarkably good, very centered in the communities that they are in. Left there at 12 years of leading that, went to Asia with the goal of marrying missions and media. And that was in the late 80s. And we launched something called Asia Pacific Media that is now in its 36th year. And we've done everything from dialect radio programming to short video teachings, short dramas, full-length movies, social media in its variety, and the training of Asian workers, the next generation, in using media to expand gospel witness as well as connect people to churches. Kind of taken, I've walked along with the journey and the growth of communication that we've seen for 30 plus years now. And it's been an exciting journey, a great team in Manila, and also work that we do in a number of other countries in Southeast Asia or Asia and the Pacific. It's now based out of Memphis, continuing to lead the ministry that is in Asia, primarily with other countries. In a nutshell, as we say, a little bit of background. And the passion is that we have such an amazing opportunity today as believers and as the church to use these communication tools. And often we're not using them to the effect that it's possible. So can we expand that vision? Can we take people further? Can we make the gospel more accessible in the lives of those that are searching? The old answers don't work. So when old answers don't work, we're looking for new answers. And many, many times, most of the time now, people are certainly using media as a way to Google an answer. How do I handle this? What do I do when I feel like this? We have a wonderful opportunity at this moment. That's a quick bit of history. People will ask, another podcast, why in the world are you doing this? What is the purpose that you have in mind? Maybe, Layne, you could start that out.
It's just like Paul using letters to reach distant churches in today's ministries, and his purpose was, how do you harness the full power of what Jesus Christ brought, right? Like, what was his message? What is the truth? Well, ours is the full power of media to reach borders and barriers, cross over those borders and barriers for Jesus Christ. So really, for me, what this podcast is, it's about sharing the power of media in modern day ministry as almost like a media missionary, crossing oceans, time zones, divisions, personal borders, to bring the message of Christ to every corner of the earth, to every corner of someone's house, to every corner of your neighborhood. It's almost encompassing the whole globe, right? This mission is not just about using tools, but using and fulfilling the divine the command of Christ to bring the gospel to every corner of the world so that everybody can know the love and the salvation of Jesus Christ. And that's really, for me, what this is about.
And really, two simple scriptures motivate, and we can go deeper than this, but there is the Great Commission, and it is something that Jesus shared with his disciples on 5 different occasions in every one of the Gospels, as well as the book of Acts. It was the only thing that he said to his disciples after the resurrection more times than once. And so it is a go into all the world, preach the gospel to all creation, make disciples. And the second verse is what Paul would say as his methodology of ministry. He becomes all things to all men, that by all means some would be saved. And looking at the 21st century of where we're at, media is a gift. If God is the creator of everything, media is a gift to the church at this point in time. It's being used in a lot of negative ways, but it can be redeemed and the message can go further. And it's one of those means, but that doesn't just mean it just falls into our lap and we just start doing it well. It's like anything. It's a skill, it's a passion, that mixing those two things together and seeing it for the purpose of increasing the kingdom understanding among people around the world, impacting them with stories about the gospel, whatever their background is, introducing them to faith. That's why we use the term connected faith. I think that the church primarily in most parts of the world is a sleeping giant when it comes to using this well. And hopefully through this podcast, we can introduce ideas and background that can help us get on the journey of making the gospel accessible to more and more people who have no faith, who've never understood faith, who may not even know who Jesus is. But we are potentially wonderful influencers of them. And this is one way of doing it, because common ground in the 21st century is the internet and the smartphone. It's everywhere. So that's a little bit, I think, of why another podcast, why this may be important. And we're really focused a lot on it flowing out of local churches or gatherings of belief, because that's where the end result needs to be. I said this years ago, that media that begins from a local church will end up with people in a local church. Media that begins in the hearts of people who are connected together in faith will bring people into that connection. So it is not parachurch. It is church, because the end result is we want people connected with a faith community. And we think that media can leverage that happen. Why does it matter? I think you've already talked about that. The physical boundaries that are out there, the cultural boundaries that are out there, but yet they can be bridged. And one of the things that bridges it is the modern tools that we've been given. I remember, Layne, go back a few years with me, but I remember my first cell phone. It was the Nokia 8. It weighed 5 pounds. It was a brick. But it was the coolest thing because it had a screen and I could actually call people from the car or anywhere I wanted to. And I could actually send a text message on a green screen and people could respond to it. I could go to other countries and still use it. It was remarkable. Well, it's an eyesore. It's a dinosaur at this point compared to what tool is available. And these tools, the things that you have in your own pocket or on your desk or in your purse, is a tool that is also accessed by Buddhists, by Muslims, by people from whatever background of faith or no faith. That tool is in their hand and they're using it to communicate and learn and grow and socialize and all of that. So a thing that takes us across boundaries. The church needs to marry that with the vision of bringing the gospel to new people.
We do these fun things, right? Like, you remember rotary phones. I remember the phones on the wall in the house and all that. And if you drove, no one was going to reach you until you got to the next destination if they knew that phone number, right? But it's almost like if someone's in the water drowning, they don't care what you believe. They don't care, your faith or where you're from. They just care that you came into the water and helped them. You got them out from drowning, right? The fact that you can just call someone, you get a whim, go, man, I haven't talked to that person in the longest time. You just reach for your phone, you call them, they go, wow, I really needed this. Thank you so much. How many times does that happen? We all have that. And just the power of accessibility that you have if you respect of being able to reach into someone's life and give them a positive word when they most need it. And that we're just talking about the brick phones, right? I remember my dad had the first mobile phone in his car. It was like this big, and it had a sign on it and said, "Don't put near head," like the main base of it. And it's like, oh my goodness. I thought it was the coolest thing. But, we're just talking about very limited technology back in the late 80s. Still now today translates of being able to reach someone from wherever they are. It's a very powerful tool.
Several years ago, I was in the nation of Myanmar, used to be called Burma, just north of Thailand, a very poor nation, very much controlled by a military junta today. There's a civil war happening there. It's an ugly place. But as I was walking through a particular neighborhood, I saw a group of construction workers, very, very obviously poor, day laborers, and they were on a break. They were building a house, and they were on a break, and they were resting in the shade. This guy that I looked at, his pants were torn. His shirt was probably should have been thrown away a month ago. But there he was on break with a smartphone, looking at a video, Buddhist background, no doubt, in some of the remotest area you could imagine, without internet, because digital was available, dirt cheap, and there were certain sites that were available at no cost. And here he was accessing information or entertainment while he was taking a break. And he was probably making just a few dollars a day for hard backbreaking labor. But imagine that in places around the world, the opportunity. That spurred me on to see how valuable it is that our message should be there.
It's almost like the shoes that you wear. It's a status symbol. You might not have all the money in the world, but you're going to wear this brand of shoe, right? You and I were talking about the iPhone, how a lot of people just don't have the iPhone because most of that technology is in way lower cost. But an iPhone is a huge status symbol in other parts of the country. Well, here, again, like the shoes, you'll see kids with iPhones that probably don't have much, but they have a smartphone of some form or factor, and the ability, the beauty of accessibility, if we go with just the positive ramifications of everybody has a smartphone in America these days, it almost seems like it, is that it's not about how loud you are. It's about how authentic you are.
Yeah, that's really.
I've noticed this. I've noticed this with the younger generations, and I think it might just be because of the sins of the father. Almost like every generation, we have very polished, very advertising, very car salesmanish kind of stuff in different generations, and now the younger generations, the Gen Z, whatever, Gen Alpha or whatever we're calling them now, they want authenticity. So it's not about volume. It's about depth, authenticity, and the power of the Holy Spirit. When they hear those testimonies, or when they hear what can God do for me, right? That's really what they're looking at for the very beginning. Like, how can I get out of what I'm dealing with? And hearing someone else's story of how they're very similar in a very similar scenario, the power of that is astronomical. And the fact that it's just a search away, that's what we're talking about.
The interesting thing, 10 years ago, the church wasn't really awakened. It was COVID that got everybody's attention because it accelerated the need to use the digital tools to keep congregations together. In the U.S., some churches couldn't meet for a few weeks or a month or 6 weeks, maybe at the most. But in other parts of the world, the church was literally shut down for months in some countries for over a year, because the response of the government was, we don't have the medical facilities to take care of a pandemic. So therefore, the only number of people that can meet in one place is 10 or less. And they had security to be able to lock it down. And at that point, if the church was going to continue to exist, we had people literally calling us and saying, what do we do? How do we keep us together? And people in America, churches in Asia, churches in other parts of the world went online out of necessity. It was the only way that we could continue to have service, keep people together, keep the church viable, connect with our members. And the church at COVID entered into the digital world in a way that they had never considered that before. And then all of a sudden, they began to see, well, people really watch. And there were some people that did it well, and they began to get testimonies of the fact that people actually came to church as a result of watching us online. And pastors struggled with the fact, I've got so many other things to do. I don't know how to operate a camera. Who's going to help me? And so there were all of these issues that 10 years ago, they weren't even a consideration. But starting 2019, 2020, it exploded on the scene, and the church had to begin to deal with this thing of what do we do with the digital world and how do we use it well? And I think even today, the church is struggling very much with that question. How do we do it well? Out of the best of motives. That may be another reason that hopefully from this podcast, you're going to get ideas and direction and hear stories and illustrations.
Now, remember, like a lot of people don't probably, if they're young enough, they don't remember what it was like before. A lot of ministry leaders remember before COVID. They never did video calls. They didn't do like video conferences on Zoom. Zoom wasn't, no one even knew what Zoom was. What's Zoom? Skype. Now, we don't even hear about Skype anymore. I kind of went away. In statistically, 30% of churches in the United States have an ongoing online Bible class, like a Bible study. That didn't exist before COVID. And how low that percentage is pretty staggering to me. If you think they weren't even technologically literate, and now we've got 30% of all churches in America that have a Bible study online, that's pretty significant if you go from not knowing anything to now having something. And then you think virtual streaming on church was somewhat there. I mean, people knew about it. There was a lot of churches doing it, but every church had to get in the game at that point, because it was just like you either had a connection with your congregation, you either had a connection with people, or you simply did not have a church. It was the things that happened because of the horrificness of what's known as COVID-19 or the coronavirus. And you think of how God moved throughout that movement. It was almost like you took the church 30, 40 years down the road and out of necessity. And just think of all the people just out of COVID, just out of the fact that you had to have video streaming or video conferences and trainings that we're now doing with, AP Media, what that was like beforehand. And now it's almost like everybody does video. I watch people talking to people walking down the street. I was like, it's just part of nature. It's part of our DNA now.
The live stream platforms that are available to the church, the social media tools, all of these, from Instagram to Twitter to TikTok to Facebook. Statistic, 90% of millennials and Gen Z use social media daily. Now, that would be people that are 35 and under. Although we are seeing a movement among youth toward God, there is also a great exit that a lot of those that are under 30 have left the church, who have never connected with the church. And how are you going to connect with those? So hopefully out of this podcast, we're going to be learning what others are doing. We're going to be learning some new tools. We're going to be having some guests along that will help us to understand as a church how to use tech tools. Maybe an action step that you might want to do before we have our next podcast is I want to introduce you to a website. The website is called wearesocial.com. It is free. And if you go there and you begin looking on statistics related to the US, related to social media usage, why people are on social media, percent of people that are there, what age group are there, platforms that they use. All of those things have been researched by a secular company. It's available. The information that you will gather from that simple 5 to 10 minute deep dive is just going to be remarkable. It's going to amaze you at how this has proliferated, and it's going to inspire you to the fact of, wow, what is happening there? It's more than I even dreamed possible. So take a moment, do a little bit of homework. Our call to action, look at wearesocial.com, and join us next time as we continue to talk about the marrying of tech, the Connected Faith, an Asia Pacific Media podcast. I'm Bill Snyder with Layne McDonald, and we really appreciate your joining. Share it with a friend, okay? And we'll be back at various sites.